to turn to Exodus chapter 3. Exodus chapter 3, very familiar account. The Lord appearing to Moses in a burning bush. In reading with verse 1, now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of God, which is Sinai, even to Horeb, which is the mountain range. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he, Moses, looked, and behold, the bush was burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burnt. And when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called unto him out of the midst of the bush, and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Draw not nigh hither. Put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place wherein thou standest is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters. For I know their sorrows, and I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and bring them out of that land into a good and large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and Perizzites, and the Hivites, and Jebusites. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel is come unto me, and I have also seen the oppression wherein the Egyptians oppressed them. Come now therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. And Moses said unto God, Who am I, that I should go unto Pharaoh, and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt? And he said, Certainly I will be with thee, and this shall be a token unto thee, that I have sent thee. When thou hast brought forth the people out of Egypt, ye shall serve God upon this mountain. And Moses said unto God, Behold, when I come to the children of Israel, and shall say unto them, The God of your fathers has sent me unto you, and they shall say to me, What is his name? What shall I say unto them? And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, Thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am, hath sent me unto you. And God said moreover unto Moses, that thou shalt say unto the children of Israel, The Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, hath sent me unto you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial unto all generations. Go and gather the elders of Israel together, and say unto them, The Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob, appeared unto me, saying, I have surely visited you and seen that which is done to you in Egypt. Again, this is the record of Moses being called of God to lead the Israelites from Egyptian bondage. From Stephen's account in Acts chapter 7, we know that Moses is now 80 years old. And as part of his training for God's service, there was the 40 years of influence of Pharaoh and Egypt in his life. And then there's been 40 years of tending sheep for his father-in-law. And though these were certainly a part of his preparation and training for the service of the Lord, they did not fully equip him for what the Lord would have him to do. So our text opens with Moses on the backside of the desert. That is the distant wilderness. He's away from the influence and the ambitions and the pursuits of Egypt. He comes to the mountain of God, again, Sinai, even to Horeb, which is the mountain range. Throughout the Old Testament, this has been a place of God's glory, a place of God's calling, a place of communion with God, a place of revelation, a place of sanctification, a place of peace and power. In the text, here is verses 1 through 6, the manner in which God appeared unto Moses. In verses 7 through 10, God reveals to Moses what he will have him to do. And in verses 11 through 16, God is telling Moses that he must look beyond himself, look beyond the service that God was calling him to, and just look to the Lord. So again, though the past 80 years of Moses' life were a part of his training for the Lord's service, they did not equip him for what God would have him to do. But what transpires here in Exodus 3 would be the equipping of Moses to do God's work. So what we read here is the foundation for Moses' service to the Lord. I'd like to speak on how to be prepared and able to do what God would have us to do. And there are two words in the text and one phrase that tells us this. And we'll get to those toward the end of the message. But first of all, let's consider the context of who God is and the personal experience of Him. We read in verse 2 that the angel of the Lord appeared unto him. It's a Christophany, simply a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ. They're throughout the Old Testament. We are told how this appearance took place in verse 2. In a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And we're told that though the bush burned with fire, the bush was not consumed. There was a God interruption in the life of Moses. The first thing God does is get the attention of Moses. Moses, tending to the flock, sees a bush in flames. But the unusual thing was the bush was not consumed. The bush is a type of Christ. Fire engulfing the bush, but the bush is unaffected by the flames. The destroying power of fire upon that bush, yet the bush is not destroyed. Again, it's a pictorial of Christ. God has the attention of Moses through that bush. In verse 3, the thought process of Moses is revealed. And with his attention upon the bush, we read in verse 4, God called him out of the midst of the bush that's on fire. So, fire, yet the bush shows no evidence of the fire. And then a voice coming from the midst of the bush, calling Moses by name. Moses, Moses. So you have an amazing sight and then an all-powerful voice coming from this bush. What we read here is the captivating presence of God. And notice the response of Moses. Here am I. Here am I. A response of submissiveness, A response of ready obedience. A call so powerful that you have to submit. You have no choice. We see here that everyday life is overflowed. Moses, feeling compelled to draw closer, the Lord in verse 5 says, "Draw not nigh hither." And then there's further instruction. "Put off thy shoes from off thy feet." The reason for the place wherein thou standest is holy. That is, it is sacred. It is set apart. So what is transpiring here is beyond ordinary, beyond common. Put off thy shoes from off thy feet. He must put off the shoes of ordinary walk in ordinary life. Again, God is calling him to service. He must put off the shoes of life. This is needed. In our text, God so intervened that everyday life now takes a back seat. It's not what matters. A God intervention that raised or brought Moses out of the ordinary to the extraordinary. A God intervention that moved him to an entirely different level. Take off your shoes. Again, representing everyday life. I've got something else other than you just living life. God was on display to Moses. Verse 6, we hear the voice of the Lord say, I am the God of thy father. That is, I am the God that your father trusted. I am the God of Abraham. I am the God of election and blessing. I am the God of Isaac. That is, I am the God that miraculously spares life. I am the God of Jacob, a God of unprecedented love, a God possessing patience and compassion, a God of transforming power, a God who can overhaul lives and provide hope where there is no hope. It is God and Moses. God and Moses. And the Lord is saying to Moses, I made promises to your forefathers. And I was with them. I was with them to bless them. And I am here for you. And I am here for the children of Israel. So God stands revealed as the faithful one. Then in verses 7 and 9, God is revealed to Moses as tender, as compassionate, as loving, the one who knows, the one who identifies with his own. In verse 8, he is revealed to Moses as the deliverer. I am come down to deliver them. God is holy. God is separate from all else, but He's not distant. I am come down to deliver them to bring them up out of that land. But that's not all. I'm not only going to bring them out, I'm going to bring them into a good land, a large land, a land flowing with milk and honey. So it is from that land unto. I am here to bring you out of misery and hopelessness to a land overflowing with blessing. So it is God connected to human needs. God coming down for His own. God reveals His purpose for Moses. Back in verse 8, we hear God say, I am come down to deliver them out of the land of the Egyptians, out of the land. But in verse 10, notice what He says. I will send thee that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. God's purpose is to deliver His people from bondage and bring them into a land of blessing. And He would use Moses to accomplish this. Now, from verse 10, Moses might ask, thought may have crossed his mind, are you going to do this or am I? Because God said He'd do it, and then He says Moses will do it. And God would answer, yes, Moses, that's right. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it through you. And that's what God is telling him in verses 8 and 10. I'm going to do it. But I'm going to do it using you. God could have sent a fleet of angels to deliver His people. But God says to Moses, I'm going to use you. God could do it all by Himself. But He will use Moses. And our text serves as a reminder that we have a God purpose in life. That's true of all of us. We have a God purpose in life. And we are here to do His bidding. And in order to do that, we have to take off our shoes. That is, everyday life has to become secondary. It's not the primary. It's secondary. And until a child of God is brought there, they will not fulfill their God-given duty. So God tells him who He is. In verse 13, Moses said unto God, when I come to the children of Israel, and shall say unto them, the God of your fathers has sent me unto you, and they shall say to me, what is His name? What shall I say unto them? So Moses asks, when this happens, what shall I? When this happens, what should I do? Verse 14, God said unto Moses, He's answering this question, I am. I am. That says it all. That covers it all. Moses, you ask when and what? I am. That covers it all. You don't need to know anymore. That's enough. But that's not all He says. He adds that I am. Moses, I am that I am. Not only am I am, but I am that I am. God is saying to Moses, you ask me to identify myself, and really the only way that I define myself is by me. In other words, the best definition of God is God. There's no better definition. It's really the only definition. I am that I am. He's incomparable. God is saying to Moses, God equals God. Who is God? He's God. I am that I am. That is a very profound and a very deep statement. I am that I am. How profound is that statement? As profound as God. How deep is that statement? As deep as God. God equals God. Therefore, it is an unsearchable, an incomprehensible statement. I am that I am. It is a statement as great as God. I am that I am. In other words, He exists because He exists. He does not need anything outside of Himself to be Himself. He is saying, what I was, I am. Or, I am what I was, and am what I shall be. Or, I shall be what I was and am. Or, I was, I am, and shall always be. Or, I am who I am. We are dependent upon Him. That's what God is telling Moses. Moses, you ask when and what, and I am that I am. Moses, you just have to depend on me. That's it. That's it. He's what His people need. God has always been what we need. God is what we need right now. God is what we'll ever need. If you were to ask me, what is the child of God's greatest need? I would say to know who God is. That's our greatest need. Oh, I know that. No, you don't. None of us know who He is like we should. I mean to know who He is where it changes our life. Know who God is. I am that I am. What did God want Moses to know? He wanted him to know, I am that I am. He wanted Moses to know, I'm God. I'm God. Moses, you need to know that. I'm calling you to do a great task, and here's what you need to know. You don't need to know what and when. You need to know, I'm God. That's what you need. That's what you need to know. And that's what you need to live. God wanted Moses to know who He was. He's telling Moses, when you face the problem of Pharaoh, and Pharaoh is a problem, not to God, but to Moses. When you face the problem of Pharaoh, Moses, this is what you need to know and remember. I am that I am. You need to know I'm God. You need to remember I am God. He is saying, in your service to me, in doing my will, you will need someone so self-sufficient that He is everything you need, and I am. I am. He is saying to Moses, Moses, you're going to need strength, and I am. You're going to need a sustainer, and I am. You're going to need victory, and I am. He's telling Moses, Moses, I'm calling you to do something, and you have only one source, and it's me. And that is true today. God isn't going to call us to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt. But God calls each one of His people to do. And our only source, the only source we need, is Him. That's it. Well, what if this happens and this and this and this? And we make a list. And we talk ourselves out of it. And all we need to know is who God is. Notice verse 15. After declaring His being, He says, this is my memorial. What was the memorial? I am that I am. Moses was to remember who God is. We need to remember who God is. This is the foundation for serving and living for God. Know who God is, and then live it. That brings us to two words and one phrase. And again, this must be viewed in the context of what we've said thus far. It must be viewed in who God is. This is where we find our enablement to do what God is calling us to do. The foundation is, I am that I am. I'm God. That's our foundation. Now we're to do something with that foundation. So notice verse 10. Come. That's our first word. Come. In light of who I am, come. Come now. It is a call to draw near to God. In light of everything said, come now. Come now. We're sinful. We're weak. We're ignorant. We're easily deceived. Easily distracted. We're needy. We live in a world that is exhausting. We live in a world that is filled with trouble. A world of testing and evil and wickedness. A world of intense struggles and heavy burdens and overwhelming problems and sorrows and heartaches. But He is holy God. He is almighty. He is sovereign God. He is omnipresent God. He is all-knowing God. He's immutable God. He is Redeemer and Savior God. He is sustaining and all-sufficient God. He is a fortress. He is a refuge. He is a hiding place. He's gracious. He's merciful. He's loving. He's caring. Always has my best interest at heart. And listen to Him. Come now. Come now. How are we to be prepared to do God's bidding? How are we enabled to do God's bidding? Come now. Know who He is, and come. In fact, I would submit that if we really know who He is, we will come. Automatically. Come now. He's the one we can lean upon. He's the one we can confide in. He's the one we can trust. And He says, come now. He's more than any event, more than any situation, more than any circumstance. And His instruction to you and I is, come now. He's the one who can make us strong and victorious. And He says, come. He is the one who can give peace, certainty, and calm. One who can give comfort, and joy, and relief, and encouragement. And He says, come now. That is a command, and it is also an invitation. Come now. Take all your reasons and why you think you can't do God's bidding in light of who God is. Come. Come. This is where we find togetherness and identification with Him. I'm calling you to do a great service. I'm calling you to do my bidding. You're going to need to be together with me and identified with me, so come. It is an invitation to a place of communion and interaction with Him. It is an invitation to a personal experience of Him, a personal relationship with Him. Come now. Come now. This is where the heart is kept from becoming hard and bitter. You can't come to God and remain hard and bitter and cold. It's where the heart overcomes indifference. Come. This is where the heart is kept soft. You know how to keep your heart soft? Come. Come on to God. Now how to keep your heart pure? Come now. You don't need a list of 15 things. It's very simple. Come. Come. And again, if we know who He is, we will do just that. This is what will spare us entanglement. If we're going to do His bidding, we can't be entangled with life. Well, how in the world do I get around that? Come. God says, I am that I am. Come. When should I come? Come now. Now. Well, I've got to do this. Take your shoes off. Life's to take a back seat. Life's to take a back seat. Well, I'm so busy. Life is to take a back seat. This is the primary. What God would have us to do. This is why Christianity is in such a pitiful state today. Is because God's people are bound and determined that life will never take a back seat to the Lord. They're bound and determined not to allow that to happen. And they'll never serve God. Not like they ought to. This is where we find enablement come. Well, I can't. No, you can't. So come. This is where you find courage. This is where you find conviction. You cannot live near to God and not have conviction. Come. This is where faithfulness and steadfastness and commitment to God are developed and strengthened. It is where reviving is found. Come. This is a higher plane of spiritual living. Come. It's essential to you and I being prepared and able to do what God would have us to do. In light of Moses' experience at the burning bush, now notice verse 12. And he said, "Certainly, I will be with thee." That's the phrase we're interested in. One word so far, come. And now this phrase, I will be with thee. The God revealed to Moses, the I am that I am, says, I, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, the I am that I am, will be with thee. I will be with thee. I will be on common ground with thee. This is where we can talk to God, listen to God, lean upon God, draw from God, drawing from His love, drawing from His grace, His mercy, His care, His strength, and His knowledge. Living life, experiencing His presence. You can't do His bidding apart from this. You cannot truly serve Him apart from I will be with thee. We need to know that this is essential to being prepared and able to do what God would have us to do. In light of Moses' experience at the burning bush, now notice verse 16. Go. Go. That's our second word. 2 words and a phrase. Go. That's the commission to do what God has called us to do. God is saying to Moses, do what I've told you to. Go. And that in the context of, I will be with thee. Come, I will be with thee. Go. I will be with thee, go. So it's not going by ourselves. It is, I will be with thee, go. The child of God never has to go alone. Oh, you might go alone, but you don't have to. I will be with thee, go. The child of God never has to do the work of God alone. They fall into that mindset. Elijah did. Well, I'm the only one. That's not so. I'm all by myself. Well, I hope you don't have to be. I will be with thee. Never have to do His work alone. How foolish to try. It is, I will be with thee, go. God never expects me to do His bidding alone. Notice that following go, verse 17, I will bring you up. Go, I will. Verse 20, and I will. And later on, I will do. Verse 21, and I will give. So you go, and I will. Who's doing the work? God is. God is. So in order to do God's bidding, here's what we need. We need to see and know who God is. That's the foundation. We need to see that and know that every single day. In such a way that we are compelled, we are drawn, we feel a force toward Him. There's a pulling toward Him. Not a pulling away from Him, but a pulling toward Him. And that comes from knowing who He is. Come. You're not to go before you come. That's what people have it backwards today. Well, we'll just go. It doesn't work. You have to come. And know that He's with you. And then you go. Then you go. Don't put the going before the coming. And after we come, this is where we find assurance. I'll be with thee. Come. I've heard God's people say, well, if I only knew, then I would. Well, the way to know is to come. Come. And He gives you the assurance, I will be with you. And then He says, go. Go. Go and do what I've called you to do, but know this, I will. I will. Again, far too many are trying to go bypassing come. And I will be with thee. Let's get the order right. Let's keep the order right. And it's all built upon the foundation of I am that I am. This is where we are prepared to do God's bidding. You realize how many who identify as God's people are not even close. Not even close to being prepared to do His bidding. You have to know who He is. Well, how do I know that? You'll come. You will come. You will be drawn to Him. And then He gets where we find the assurance of His presence. And then we're told to go, and guess what? We have the courage and the conviction to go. Because of who He is. God's people need to stop trying to serve God in their own strength. It's foolish. It's a waste of energy. It'll amount to nothing. This is the way. This is the way to be prepared and enabled to do what God would have us to do. Do not need all circumstances to align properly to serve God. You need to know who He is. You need to come. Find assurance and then go. That's it. It's not that difficult. It's not easy to do, perhaps, but it's not difficult to understand what we need. Brother Dave, if you'd come and lead us